Hello and welcome to News Around the World here on AETV Live. I am Ogaga Ekama. We begin from the business front where the World Bank has listed Nigeria and 9 other countries as nations with high debt risk exposure. In a financial statement for the International Development Association, IDA, released on Monday, the World Bank pegged Nigeria at number 5 with a $11.7 billion IDA debt stock. As of June 30, 2021, the 10 countries with the highest exposures accounted for 66% of IDA's total exposure, it explained in the document. India tops the list with an IDA debt stock of $22 billion. Bangladesh, with $18.1 billion, is second, followed by Pakistan with $16.4 billion and Vietnam with $14.1 billion. Other countries on the list in order of appearance include Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, and Uganda. Still in business, hackers have stolen some $600 million in what appears to be one of the largest cryptocurrency heists ever, the BBC reports. Blockchain site Poly Network said hackers had exploited a vulnerability in its system and taken thousands of digital tokens, such as Ether. In a letter posted on Twitter, it urged the thieves to establish communication and return the hacked assets. Hours after the hack, the attackers started returning the funds, first in small amounts and then in millions. By Thursday evening, Poly Network said most of the remaining assets in the hacker's possessions had been transferred to a digital wallet controlled by both the hacker and the company. Poly Network says it is still waiting for the repayment process to be fully completed, but that it is working with the hacker. Away now from business to health. The World Health Organization, WHO, has announced major international trials of 3 drugs to find out whether they improve the condition of hospitalized COVID-19 patients. Artesunate, imatinib, and infliximab will be tested on thousands of volunteer patients in more than 600 hospitals in 52 countries. The 3 treatments were selected by an independent expert panel for their potential in reducing the risk of death in hospitalized patients. Artesunate is currently used for severe malaria, imatinib for certain cancers, infliximab for diseases of the immune system such as Crohn's disease and rheumatoid arthritis. Finding more effective and accessible therapeutics for COVID-19 patients remains a critical need, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said in a statement. According to the WHO, the coordinated research across dozens of countries allows the trial to assess multiple treatments using a single protocol, thereby generating robust estimates on the effect a drug may have on mortality, including moderate effects. Elsewhere, Guinea has confirmed a case of Marburg virus disease, and this is according to the World Health Organization. This is the first recorded case in West Africa of the virus that is said to be related to Ebola and, like COVID-19, passed from animal hosts to humans. The virus, which is carried by bats and has a fatality rate of up to 88%, was found in samples taken from a patient who died early this month in southern Gwokwede Prefecture, the WHO reported. The discovery came just 2 months after the WHO declared an end to Guinea's second outbreak of Ebola, which started last year and killed 12 people. The WHO said it considered the threat high at national and regional level, but low globally. A South African court has again postponed a long-delayed corruption trial against jailed former President Jacob Zuma to September 9 following his hospitalization last week for an undisclosed medical condition. Zuma, whose jailing last month for 15 months on separate contempt of court matter led to a wave of looting and unrest, was expected to appear in court on Tuesday in a $2 billion arms deal corruption case that led to his sacking as South Africa's deputy president in 2005. High Court Judge Piet Koen granted this postponement but ordered Zuma's team to produce a medical report by August 20. He also ordered the state to appoint a medical doctor of his choice to assess whether Zuma was fit to stand trial and give evidence. Zuma, 79, last month asked the Constitutional Court to annul his jail sentence, partly on the grounds that he was suffering from an unspecified medical condition. And finally, the federal government of Nigeria has said it will lift its ban on Twitter in a matter of days. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed announced this on Wednesday after the Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibanjo. Mr. Mohammed disclosed that the status of the conversation with the microblogging site has reached an amicable stage, with agreements reached in all areas except 3. The remaining 3 unresolved areas, according to him, are simply a matter of when and not if there would be an implementation of conditions discussed. One of the pending issues, according to the minister, is in relation to the condition that Twitter establishes a legal presence in Nigeria, registered as a Nigerian company with an office address and an employee to serve as a country representative in the country. While not turning down the proposition in totality, the microblogging site has maintained that the earliest it can establish a company is in 2022. That's all from news around the world. Next is the headline analysis. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back yet again. It's good to have you sticking with us, and it's time now for us to delve into headlines analysis, where we get to dissect and analyze a couple of headlines from the news you just heard. And with me is Chris Amechi, the CEO, Brands Trends Innovative. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
It's good to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaga.
Okay, so quickly, let's delve into the headlines analysis. Okay, a couple of stories in the news, but I want us to start with from South Africa, the Jacob Zuma story concerning the corruption case. Now, we know that currently he's serving a 15-month jail term, but there's a corruption case that is pending. He ought to have been tried on the 10th of August. But due to an underlying ailment, it has been postponed to next month.
Yes.
However, now, the thing there is, why I want us to look at this situation is the fact that this happened in 2005.
That's right.
He became president, and even when he was even jailed, we saw people coming out, looting, and causing mayhem.
Protesting.
Yes, protesting. Because apparently he's still someone that is loved. So it begs the question, why do people push for someone like this? What is the political system in Africa like? What is the political system in the world like in general? Because of course we cannot say he's guilty yet, but this case was already pending and people voted him as president. So I want us to look at it from that angle. Let's x-ray our politics in Africa. Let's x-ray politics in the world at large.
Okay, thank you for that question. We have an African problem, and our politicians know this. It's actually a game they play from Nigeria to South Africa to Ghana to Malaysia, Malawi, and most African countries. And that's the game of using poverty as a tool for dominance. When people depend on someone for their everyday livelihood, they throw caution to the wind. No matter what you're saying about the person, they don't care as long as they would protect him long enough for them to keep getting what they're getting from the person. That's the reason why you would have someone who's got a corruption case, have that level of protest. They don't care the details of the case. He was jailed for contempt of court, and people took to the streets to protest. Then you now begin to question the mindset of the African people. In Nigeria, the case is not different. We have governors who, after plundering their states, and they have pending cases in court where the EFCC is saying this person has embezzled this amount of money, and he still has a very strong fan base, still growing in politics, still aspiring to get into the next level, the next position, and he would still win. So they have understood the African challenge, and they are leveraging on the poverty ravaging the continent to hold on to power. So that's why you're seeing that kind of outlook in South Africa. And it's the same here in Nigeria too. And in most African countries where people who have been under subjugation, someone who has not done anything for his people, in 4 years, for example, being in office, comes back after 4 years and just gives them a token, of less than, $2. And the people return him to power. Why? Because the person voting would say, this is my benefit. Let me take this one now because I'm sure I'm not going to get anything in the next 4 years. And whenever that person goes into power, embezzles the same money that he should have used to take care of these people, these same people will come out to protest for him. That is the challenge we're seeing play out in South Africa.
Okay, and now to be fair, let's look at the flip side of the coin. Okay, now you talked about a couple of people who support this kind of people. It reminds me, and you brought Nigeria into it. A certain state in Nigeria actually erected a statue,
yes,
in honor of Jacob Zuma. Yes. Okay, and the thing is, when these things happen, but we still see well-meaning citizens of these nations. For example, Ghana also, there was a protest recently, last week, hashtag fix the country, they were protesting, and in Nigeria last year, we saw the NSAS protest, but people still come out and demand things of this government. Do you think that it's the same person, or the same set of people that vote in these people that still place this demand? Because if you consider Nigeria, even Ghana, the turn-up was high. So you ask yourself, if this population are demanding good governance, so who are the corrupt ones taking these bribes, selling their votes?
Now, there's something that the politicians are using, and it's been working so far. We actually believe that there is a third wave, in the African continent. Young people who would say, enough of the bribery, enough of the corruption, we need a better polity, we need better infrastructure and all that. And they're demanding for good governance. But the older generation understand divide and rule. So when you see people come out to protest and you see that mammoth crowd, people are agitating, they would pick a few persons amongst them and bribe them. So those people will flip and start, saying, things. Once they succeed in creating a diversion, people start having second thoughts, start saying, the message is no longer one. They've already subdued that protest. And when that fails, they will now use the power of the state to quench and quell whatever it is that those people are able to do. And because nobody would want to die for a corrupt government, nobody would want to die for a nation that they are not even sure whether their death will mean anything or will change anything, people tend to go back. That is what actually played out in the NSAS movement. Where the whole thing died down. Because who wants to die? The people that are dead already, their death didn't mean anything. We saw the George Floyd's death in the US, metamorphosed into the Black Lives Matter movement. And we saw different conversations amongst the legislature. People started talking and they started making changes when necessary. But here in Africa, even if people die in their thousands, nobody cares. And the average African youth wouldn't want to die for Africa, because you would only die when you're sure that your death would amount to something. So when these people use the divide and rule tactics, and it doesn't work, they use the power of the state to, by the time you kill 1, 2, 3, you've put fear in the hearts of the people who are protesting. And then, okay, look at what happened in Uganda, there's Museveni's election, where they had to clamp down on the young opposition, and he stayed the president. So who would want to put his life on the line for a nation that he is not even sure that his death will amount to anything? People in Africa would need to rise up and say no to bad governance and stick to it. Because even if they give you that stipend, you eat it today, the problems are still there. We don't have hospitals, we don't have good roads, we don't have water, we don't have light. So many things are wrong. So the earlier we realize that accepting their bribery to assuage our conscience and calm down whatever agitation would not help solve any problem. But then the question is, who will take the battle to them?
Okay. Okay, from your conversation, you've put majority of the onus on the African youth. They have to take the baton and do the needful. But most of the times, when such things happen, one of the things I see is that they call for international community. They say international community, these are, so a couple of times they even call for renowned figures, like in the NSAS in Nigeria. They say, add your mouth to it, say something. You benefit from Nigeria, you benefit from our economy, you do this, we support you. So is that also something the African youth or the average African should look out for, or they should look at, like, because she also stated something that, okay, if they lay their lives, it amounts to little or nothing.
Yes.
So imagine someone who is thinking of that, like, when I die, it's of no use.
Yes.
So then they call out for the African community. So I want you to strike a balance for that person watching this right now that says, I need a change in my community. I need a change in my state. I need a change in my nation. I need a change in my continent.
Okay, the thing that the African young person would realize is that nobody cares. The African community or committee of nations don't care. And time will fail me to go into the international politics and the level of corruption that happens at that level of engagement. These people are only out for what benefits them. If the corruption system within a nation benefits another country, they wouldn't want it to stop. We have seen instances where, nations sponsor terrorism. Some nations sponsor terrorism, and you ask why. Some nations sponsor government takeovers in other nations. The question is why? Because they are playing a politics that will favor them. Why are nations interested in who takes over in a particular nation? They look at the antecedents of the people vying, and they try to back whoever it is they are sure that will provide a level playing ground for them. For example, looking at the elections in the US when Donald Trump came on board, so many nations were against him because they knew that someone like him wouldn't play or dance to their tune. He would demand a fair share, a fair playing ground for the American people. And what did they do? Exactly what they were afraid of. And what did they do? They fought him to a standstill to make sure that he doesn't repeat another 4 years. In Nigeria, you will be shocked to know the vested interests of many other nations who will prefer. Of course, if you're a country who your export to a nation is running into trillions of dollars, you wouldn't want them to have industries. You would frustrate every effort to have them to be energy dependent, for example. If Nigeria becomes energy dependent, it will affect whatever country that is supplying oil. That is why you have something in Nigeria, we have what you call the cabal. In every industry, you have the cabal. These are people who hold down on that industry to make sure that things remain the way they are, so they keep benefiting what they're benefiting. So when the young African thinks that the international community is going to help solve the problem in the African continent, that would be us deceiving ourselves. So the best bet that Africa has is Africa. The best bet that Nigeria has is the Nigerian people. For example, now we have elections 2023. We're expecting that US will come and solve our problem when we are not even going to get our, what's it called now, the voting cards. We're not registering, with INEC. And by 2023, we feel that there will be a miracle that will happen. It wouldn't happen, because until we realize that we are the ones who would solve the African problem, who would answer the African question without expecting a messiah from outside. They have their problems. These countries have their own internal problems that they are worried about and they are tackling. So they wouldn't leave their problems and come, solve yours, no matter what they have in their foreign policy and all that. My dear, they will only pursue their foreign policy to the extent to which it benefits them. Every good business person would do that. So it is business in the international community, and for us to do our own business, would realize that this nation, this continent, can only be helped by their citizens.
All right. Okay, I think we've talked much on that. So something else I need us to talk about in the headlines is Twitter. Okay, not everybody can relate because it doesn't affect everybody. Yeah. But in Nigeria, there was a Twitter ban. That's what most people call it. But the federal government of Nigeria says it's a suspension. Yes, not a ban on Twitter. So now the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, he came out a couple of days to say that the suspension will be lifted in a matter of days or weeks. So now, considering that, let's retrace our steps a little. From the suspension came up in the month of June, so it's over 2 months now. And one of the things that happened, the first question I would ask you now is, if you consider before the Twitter ban and during the Twitter ban, why the Twitter ban is still on or the suspension is still on, which do you think is favorable to the nation, Nigeria? Because, for example, the federal government said there's lots of social media bullying, fake news, misinformation going on social media, while some persons come from the angle of it's business, it's a form of employment to me. So there are pros and cons to this thing. So which do you think is more favorable to the nation?
Okay, when you single out a particular platform, social media platform, and then you suspend that platform, one out of many, you suspend it, and then you say there's a lot of misinformation going on, cyberbullying, hate speech, and all that, then that doesn't appeal to common sense. Because if you want to solve the social media problem, then you have to ban all the social media platforms that you have within your country, and then begin to address these issues. So when you single out a particular one, then it begs the question, what's the motive? You understand? So that their argument wouldn't stand in any court of sensible argument. But now, when you look at before and now, after the ban, let's talk at before.
During the ban, you cannot say after the ban is still on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about before the ban. Twitter is more like a platform that connects. It's a global platform. That's one thing that makes it a little bit different, from other platforms. Some other platforms are more like entertainment. This TikTok and Instagram. In as much as you have these foreign organizations and all that being represented, but for Twitter, it's more like it's for serious-minded people. It's just like LinkedIn. Every platform has its own target audience. You see, but Twitter was more like the go-to platform for the intellectuals within the country. People who are not reasonable don't
you think?
Apply on Twitter.
You think?
Majorly, because you have people tear you to shreds, when you make mistakes and all that. But we saw a Twitter that helped give visibility to the ills.
You saw?
Many people, like myself, saw a Twitter that gave visibility to the ills of our society. Twitter was that one platform that you were getting on the spot news, information happening in many places, and then we had situations where Twitter helped people find missing persons. Once someone gets missing, immediately the picture goes round. The speed at which that particular platform helped to save people. I remember before the EndSARS movement, you had people who were at different checkpoints, and then they say, I'm being searched by SARS people, look at where I am, and then immediately the ICP, that's Ishako, that's one of a top-ranking police officer, is tagged immediately, and then the IRT response squad, as in the response is very, very spontaneous. That's Twitter. We saw a Twitter where somebody got missing, somebody was going for an interview, that's the Omoran girl, and immediately the friend raised an alarm, and people started sharing within minutes. Things started happening. We're not talking about people who use that platform as a business place. And of course, whatever happens on Twitter, you can tag different foreign bodies and all that. That was why the NSAS movement had the international attention, or got the international attention that it got. That's before the ban. Now, the cause of the ban is that somebody felt insulted and decided, in my opinion, someone got angry. Of course, there are many things surrounding that. But when you look at the reason, or the reasons that the government is given, then it doesn't hold water, because this is one out of many. So if you want to help stop cyberbullying and hate speech and all that, then why single out one? Then secondly, the Nigerian government would need to realize that this is the 21st century. So you would have to deal with challenges like cyberbullying. You have to deal with challenges like hate speech, unconfirmed news being shared and all that. You would have to deal with it. And dealing with it is not to take us back to 1980. Dealing with it means sitting down with experts to ask, how do we solve this problem without taking away this? Because everything has its pros and its cons. So how do we solve this problem without causing another problem while trying to fix a particular problem? So you banned Twitter to stop hate speech, but you have killed many people, you have stopped many businesses, you have rendered people jobless. So you've created more problems trying to solve one problem. Do we have hate speech spreading? Yes. Do we have cyberbullying? Yes. Do we have certain ills being propagated using social media? Yes. But then, how do we solve it without creating more problems? I think that should have been the discussion at that level instead of just banning Twitter. Of course, though, the CEO of Twitter said they've not reached any agreement. So, Lai Mohammed was being Lai Mohammed again.
Okay, but to be fair on the government of Nigeria, a couple of months ago also, they came out and there was this social media regulation, a bill that was flying in the National Assembly, social media. And citizens of Nigeria, there was still a pushback also, because they saw it as a form of gagging. But honestly, in all honesty, because think of it, that's one of the questions the government of Nigeria was asking. Who actually regulates the social media? Why will a platform regulate, or why will a platform determine what a nation should put out and what a nation should not put out? Even Donald Trump came out and he commended the Nigerian government because he was saying it ought to be the other way around. Like, such platforms cannot just be the one determining what a nation, the president of a nation should put out, the government of a nation should put out there. Then who regulates them?
No. Now this is a simple thing. Each of these platforms are people's private businesses. It's just like I have a shop, and then people come to my shop to sell things or to say things. And then in my shop, I would put a rule: you don't smoke here. And then when you smoke here, I will send you out. Then you come into my shop and you start smoking, and I tell you, get out. Then you now get angry that I told you to get out in my shop, and then say that why would the shop be determining what? My dear, the government has their own official channels of communication. Twitter is not the official channel of communication for any government. You chose to have an account with this platform. And this platform has rules and regulations. So if you must use this platform, obey their rules and regulations. It's just like I'm moving from Nigeria to Kenya. And they have their own rules and regulations governing their own country. And then I come in and I'm making trouble. Sir, if you won't obey our rules, go back to where you're coming from. So if Nigeria feels insulted or feels that these particular platforms shouldn't determine what we put out or not, then boycott that platform. Remove all your government agencies from the platform. Go to whatever platform that suits your, and you have your own local television. You can create your own social media platform. Twitter wouldn't stop you. Facebook wouldn't stop you.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have your own, and then it becomes the government's official, handle. For Donald Trump, he was saying things that Twitter found against their rules, and they kicked him out. They are a private company. Yes, the whole argument about big tech and all that. If you are angry with big tech, find your own tech. And then do your own stuff on that, your own tech. We saw Google, kick out a lot of apps that didn't have that speech regulation, regulatory rules, and all that. Are you angry? Then create your own. It's a private business. So you wouldn't hold Twitter, and say who regulates this. You regulate it by finding your own, if that is your problem. Of course, but we have to go beyond the pettiness of politics and address the real issue, the real problem. We are in the 21st century. Information flies at the speed of light. So how do we make sure that we have a way that the populace will verify information before it goes out? So the government can come up with a bureau of information verification, where people, like a platform, where people can, channel, go through, okay, is this true and all that. And it has to be on the spot, like, I need to get it live whenever I want. So they have to use technology to solve technological problems. You don't use decrees and all these archaic ways that, they used to solve problems in the 1980s to solve problems in 2021. So use technology to solve technological problems.
Okay. The last point, I think I held brief for the government. Now, for the common citizen, he said the government has to come up with technology to verify news information. Now, it's quite tricky because the moment you leave the verification of information to a particular authority, I think the bias has stepped in. For example, if you consider the NSAS protest, the official Nigerian Army Twitter account came out and debunked the fact that they were at the toll gate. And later they came out and they agreed. So imagine if it was the government who had to verify that information.
Now, we're looking at, the government saying, why would a platform, censor what the government is putting out? So that's why I said, okay, put up your own, have a platform.
So what's the compromise now?
But when you actually, looking at the social media bill, when you look at the intent, the real intent behind these bills, you realize that there is something wrong somewhere. You realize that these people actually want to stop people from releasing information that the government has not censored or sanctioned. That's where the problem that you just pointed out, comes in. Now, these social media platforms gives the ordinary, the average citizen an opportunity to find the truth. And you cannot get the truth from the government. You cannot. You see. So where the balance is where I said these challenges are real-time challenges, 21st century challenges, where you would have all these problems, you know, where people are abused, people are demonized and all that. But there are also channels of addressing these issues. You can sue someone for libel if the person actually, you know, denigrates your person. You know, there are many things that you can do, but you do not censor speech. You know, I think there was a president who said that I can only guarantee freedom of speech, but not freedom after speech. You know, and that is why, or what some of these state governments are doing across the different continents. You know, but for the common person out there who wants to know the truth at every given point in time, you know, they shouldn't be restricted. If you as a government wants to make sure that rumor peddlers or people who want to cause mischief, you know, don't have the upper hand, then you have to have an information ministry that is up and about, that releases information to counter whatever. You have social media, all these, they are special assistant on media and all those, you know, what are they doing? That's their job, to make sure, okay, there's an information going on, okay, they release a counter information to say, from the position of the government. And all bodies, businesses and corporate organizations would have to, you know, step up their game. But you do not gag social media because you want to regulate speech or regulate a hate speech and all that. In fact, what is hate speech? Because from the angle where the government is coming up, hate speech is more like anything that doesn't favor them. And then that's where the problem is. So until government is sincere about their dealings with the 21st century problem, they would only create more problems trying to solve the current problem that they have.
All right, thank you. We can go on and on and on, but I guess this is where we have to pull the plug today on Headlines Analysis. Thank you very much, Chris Amechi, CEO, Brand Strength Innovative.
Thank you, Oga.
Thank you for being my guest on the program.
Thank you.
And it's a wrap on Headlines Analysis here on AETV Live. Do well to join in next time again immediately after news around the world. I am Ogaga Ikama.